Good morning, everybody. It's Motivational Monday, and I'm now back 9 o'clock on YouTube, Step by Step Listenings page, and also in Manager Critic community group. So, gorgeous welcome. We are now on the 28th of December 2020. We have just a couple more days before the end of the year finishes, and it signifies often for people to make conscious decisions about what they'd like to have happen next year. So I know that me personally, yesterday my husband is actually on holiday this week, and I had a week off before he went on holiday, so we didn't quite get our diaries aligned this year because his company actually dictated when he could take his time off rather than us choosing, which is what we normally do together. And so I noticed yesterday that I was feeling a bit lethargic, and I really was like, oh, not that I don't want to come and talk to you, I don't love you all, but it was a bit more sort of like, So I want to share with you my 3 strategies, to my 3 ways of turning Christmas lethargy into proactive action. And they are, the questions are in above. One of it, the first one is clean setup. One of the things that most people will think about around this time of year will be thinking about perhaps things that didn't work last year and what they'd like to have happen next year. And I'm really aware right now with the pandemic that many might feel that there's no point planning because you just don't know what's going to happen. However, you can set the intention of what you want to have happen. How you create that will depend on and when and where may be flexed or changed. But it's a bit like saying, well, I want to head for Edinburgh, and I might need to change when I get there, or I might need to change how fast I get there, but where you want to head will be the same thing. It's just the pandemic will give you some feedback as to when and how you can do things. So the first question to think about is, what would you like to have happen in 2021? So when you're at 28th of December next year and you're looking back over the year, what would you like to have happen? If you were to look back and you had to write about the year ahead, and you could, what would it be like? And one of the things that I've talked to the Academy, the Do Delegate Ditch Academy members about today, is I've been talking about, for me personally, the 3 things that I'm looking for, the 3 words that sum up next year for me are fit, fun and focus. That's for 2021 is got to be I've got to have more fun. Really started to focus on that in the last sort of 2 to 3 months of 2020, and really noticed a massive difference in my mental health and well-being, but just generally enjoying life a lot more, where I actually put as much attention on planning fun stuff in my diary, planning fun stuff with my clients, fun stuff with the family, as I did perhaps the financially rewarding stuff that goes on as well. So they're the 3 things I want you to think about. So if 2021 was just the way you'd like it to be, it'd be like what? Or you could ask yourself the question, when thinking about 2021, what would you like to have happen? So that's the first thing. Now, those of you that you'll have a statement written down. So I've got fun, fit and focused, and I've spent some time today thinking about what will I hear and see that will tell me that I'm having fun. What kind of fit is that fit? And for me, that fit is, there's 4 levels of fitness. There's emotional, mental, physical and financial fitness. That's what I want to have for this year. The fun is about, literally, it's about having more time where I can just be present in the moment. I'm not planning, I'm not reflecting, I'm just here in the moment enjoying what's happening, and it will definitely involve more laughter. And the focused is that I am really focusing on what matters. And one of the things I really want to let go of from last year is I've noticed that actually, no matter how much self-talk I had and things I was talking about what was not working, none of that really changed anything big time, unless you think about what you want. So I want to be focused on what matters, what's working, and let go of the self-talk, even more, let go of the self-talk that doesn't serve me. So that's for me. So I'd love to know from you. Please put a comment if you could come up with 3 words, or come up with your statement for next year. What would you like to have happen? And highlight 3 words there that really sort of resonate with you. And then my invitation would be to take time to get clarity of what you mean by what you say, because the number one reason why it doesn't happen is often because you actually don't know what you mean by what you're saying. So get clarity of what you mean. The second thing about part of the clean setup model is to actually ask yourself, how do you need to be? And it's one of the things that lots of people don't focus on. It's about, how's your attitude, your focus. Mine this year, my 3 words that came up for me were calm, courageous and conscious. So it's really about wanting to spend more time in that sort of grounded state, spending more time. Good morning. We had 3 and it's gone down to 1. Whoever's with me, please say hello. But for me, that calmness is about being calm on the inside. I don't want to have, I can do the confident and the capable on the outside, and it can be, sometimes it's authentically is who I am, and other times it's more of a performance. But what I know really worked from this year was spending more time in meditation, doing walks in nature, really spending time grounding myself, coming back to that sort of that fun and that focused, where I'm actually being present in the moment rather than worrying about what has happened or reflecting loads and worrying about what could happen or what we need to happen. It's like really being in that present moment is really what I want to do. So for me, it's calm, courageous, and conscious. And the courageous for me is like a line. It's about taking steps that instead of, that maybe some people won't like, being okay with the fact that this is a purpose-driven decision, that I know why I'm doing it and I know who I'm doing it for, and that may not suit everybody all of the time. And so there's this, I've realized I've got this sort of inner lion that's going to be roaring, hopefully not all over anybody, but it's going to be the way of getting myself motivated. And then the last thing for me is this conscious, and it's really about thinking before I speak, thinking before I act, and actually having real conscious awareness of why I'm doing what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. So I want you to think about, for you now, for 2021 to be just the way you'd like it to be, how do you need to be? And please pop those answers in the box. I'd love to hear that from you. So that's one model called Clean Setup, which is really great for setting you up for success. However, over the years of working with people, what I discovered is people who don't know themselves very well, who don't know what works for them, can often, when asked the question, what would you like to have happen, they can actually answer with what they think they ought to have or should have, or what other people are doing. And often then the reason they don't make it happen, it doesn't become a reality, is because they actually weren't really asking for what they wanted. They were just asking for what they thought they should be doing, to conform, to fit in, to belong, for acceptance, etc. So one of the other things, the clean feedback models, this is the step 2 in the ways to overcome Christmas lethargy, is to actually think about, reflect over last year and think about what worked about last year. Now, this was a really useful exercise. I spent some time yesterday reflecting on it, and I wrote down loads and loads of stuff, and I was able to sort of compartmentalize them into sort of 7 core areas and really look at what worked. And that then informed the decision about fun and focus, because I realized that actually it really worked putting my attention on these things last year. So the question to ask yourself is, what worked about last year? And it's really okay, and I really encourage you not to get too hung up on how often or how frequent. It's really easy for the critic to come in and go, yeah, but it only happened once or only happened twice. So for example, I had 2 gorgeous days with my grandchildren. In July, when the lockdown was lifted, we went up and booked a campsite, and we met our grandchildren and our family outside in an open area, so we could actually have time with the grandchildren before we went away in August. And again in September, when we were allowed to do some visits, we had my granddaughter came down, and we had a day together. So I only saw the grandchildren twice last year, and it wasn't enough, and it's not what I wanted. But when I really focus on what worked about those days, it gives me a different energy inside. It gives me my system a different kind of feedback, and it's like, well, actually, so if I could get 2 more of those days this year, that would be great. The expectation will be different, but I know the quality of those days. I know what worked about those days, and therefore I can look to do something similar to those again in the year ahead. So thinking about last year, what worked? For me, definitely what worked was spending some time learning. So I learned how to do online courses, and the 7-day Make It Happen Motivator got launched. As a result of that, and listening to what the clients wanted, the Do Dad Get or Ditch Academy became a reality, which is something I've been dreaming about for about 6 or 7 years. So that was amazing. Other things that really worked for me was just slowing life down generally, and not running around so much, not traveling so much, and actually being more present in the moment with what's going on. So the feedback model starts with what worked or what is working. So take some time out, and so depending on how your time profiles work, you might find this harder to go back over, but maybe go through your photographs or go through your actual diaries, online or otherwise, and check your diaries and have a look at what was happening, and do it with a filter of what worked about that. Even if it felt like it went really, really wrong at the time, what did it teach you? What was the thing that you learned from that experience? Then reflecting over the years, like what didn't go so well, And again, notice the things that didn't go so well, but in making sure that you don't give all the what didn't go so well more attention than what worked. So if there's something that really didn't go so well, maybe just thinking, if you find yourself spending, writing pages and pages of notes or talking for ages about the things that didn't work, just pick out a couple of those and think, so what did work about them? What have they taught you? What's the lesson that you'll take from 2020 into 2021? And then lastly, the third question in the clean feedback model is, what could have worked better? So given all that, so knowing what worked and what didn't go so well or didn't work for you, what could work better? And giving yourself some time to think about those things now means that when you ask questions like, what would you like to happen? Or you're trying to make a decision. So for example, now when I make decisions, it will be through the filter of fun, fit, and focused. And if the thing that I'm doing is not fun, and it's not making me either financially fit, emotionally fit, mentally fit, or physically fit, then I'll question whether I do it. And focus, if I find myself being out of kilter, or I spend more time reflecting on things I could have done, should have done, or wish I had done, or planning what I could do rather than actually doing it, being really focused and taking action, then that will help me calibrate my decision-making process as I go through. So step 1, clean setup. Step 2 is actually looking at your clean feedback, so looking at what's worked in the past. And the last thing is the strategies, the 3, is looking at patterns, process, and progress. So it's great knowing what worked and what didn't work and what could have worked better. It's great knowing what you'd like to have happen. They're all sort of future based, but often what happens is there's a gap between where you are now and where you want to be. And the question you can ask yourself is, what happens in between where you are now and where you want to be? Now, depending how big that gap is, you might find that the first thing you need to do is learn something or ask somebody, because maybe first thing you have to do is work out how to get from one to the other. So some questions you can ask yourself is, what happens in between now and where you want to be? And take some time just to listen to yourself and think about it. And for me, what's come up is that I need to take some time this week to do some planning. I need to be thinking about the 90-day vision. I need to be thinking about this month's vision, and then I need to break it down to weekly and then daily tasks, things I physically need to get on and do every single day. So for me personally, right now, this week is really focused on the 7-day Make It Happen Motivator. It starts on the 4th of January, which we'll be working on to help people to go through the clarity process so they get absolute clarity of what they mean by what they say. So I'd love to know for you, think about, so what happens between where you are now and where you want to be. And if it's a really, you're drawing a blank, you don't know, then think about what's the first thing that needs to happen. And maybe the first step is working out how you get from one to the other. And what I would say to you is, if you're doing something that's completely new, something you haven't done before, then what you can do is, if you know your process for learning something new, then maybe the first step is that you're going to have to find a teacher. There's someone that can teach you, or you're gonna you might find that you then have to save some money up to be able to pay for training. It might be that you need to build up confidence to be able to ask for help. Maybe you know people that could do it, but you don't want to impose and you don't want to take liberties, but they're friends of yours and you could ask them for some help. So sometimes it's not the obvious thing you think, like, this is the action you've got to take. Sometimes there's some things you need to do in terms of that sort of setting up for success. It's like you've got to learn how to do something, you need to save the money, and they are part of the process. So in the step 3, think about where you are now, where you want to be, what's the first thing that needs to happen, and then what happens, and then what happens. And that's how you get your process, your series of actions, things that you're going to take to get you to where you want to be. The second thing in this section is to think about the progress. How will you measure progress? One of the biggest reasons why we become really critical of ourselves and we lose motivation is because of the fact that we have a specific way, usually the logical mind, it's something that's measured maybe in numbers. So it might be how much money's in the bank account. I mean, the terms of authors, when I work with Karen, it's often how many words are on a piece of paper. It can be all sorts of things that we can do, but a logical mind will tend to go into things that can be measured in numbers, and it's a great way of doing things. But also sometimes the thing that we're trying to do is get more confident or to be more focused. So how will you measure that? And so for me, it will come down to consciously being aware of my levels of motivation and my energy, because that's what will tell me whether, if I'm spending too much time in the future and too much in the past, then I won't be as focused. And so I'll know by where my attention is, and that's how I can measure my progress, whether I'm spending more time being really focused and enjoying what I'm doing and being in the moment than worrying about what has happened or worrying about what could happen. That will be my way of measuring it. So how will you measure your progress? What will be the markers? One of the 7 principles of motivated action, these things are the process, progress, and patterns that we're talking about today. They're 3 of the 7 motivated principles of action. And people who are motivated to take action know how they're going to measure progress. The other thing, the third thing then, is to be aware of your own patterns. Now, one of the biggest patterns I see when it comes to motivation and getting our proactive action happening is that we know the process, we'll know what's got to happen, we'll know how we're going to measure progress, but usually our perceptions of time can trigger us to get demotivated. So thinking about your own patterns, what's most likely to motivate you to do things? So I'm often motivated to do things for other people. So yesterday I wasn't really feeling it. I was like, oh, I just want to have another lay in. I've had gorgeous lay in. I've been sleeping like 10 or 11 hours. Probably encouraged by a lot of sugar and unhealthy eating, which has put me into a bit of a comatose. So I've started eating healthier yesterday. I've needed less sleep today, which has been great, and getting back up and getting sort of motivated. So I know one of my patterns is that if I eat high sugary foods or fatty foods, I will tend to need more sleep. So if I want to get loads done, the first thing I need to do is change the way that I eat. I know that the other pattern for me is if I haven't put a date in the diary and I haven't made a time commitment. So I knew I had to do this video at 9 o'clock today. If I didn't have this video to do with my community at 9 o'clock today, then I could very easily have just laid in with my husband and thought, when I get up, I'll get do the bank account and I'll go through the planning for the business, etc. But it wouldn't have been as effective. So I know that one of my patterns is I'm always much more motivated if somebody else is depending on me to do it. It's why coaching is a great industry. It means that your coach is waiting for you to do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. You've got that accountability partner to make sure that you take action when you say you're going to take action. So think about yourself right now. What are your patterns? Think about, so do you know that you start with a 1-year goal and then after 6 weeks you kind of teeter off? Think about it right now at the beginning and thinking about your clean setup. What kind of resource support do you need in place to make sure that you don't fall into those patterns of behavior that don't serve you? You can also look at the patterns of behavior that really work for you. So for me, what works for me is I've made a commitment to be here at 9 o'clock with you, and now that I'm talking to you, I'm back in the flow and the energy's there again, and it's all great. So I got up at 6:45 this morning, which is the earliest I've been up in like the last 10 days, and it's been great to be able to rest and recoup and restore and recharge. But I know my patterns are that I have to have a commitment, a time commitment to somebody, otherwise I won't do it. I tend to give up. So, and I will fall into the patterns of just rather than snuggling up with my husband who's on holiday and doesn't need to have to get out of bed. So I want to leave you those 3 ways. I hope they're useful for you. So 1, set yourself up for success. What would you like to happen? How do you need to be? And what kind of resource or support do you need? One of the biggest things people don't think about up front is what support you need. Second thing is, look at the feedback. What's worked, what could have worked, what didn't work so well, or what could work better. And the last thing, be aware of your process, the actual series of actions that's going to be required to take you from where you are now to where you want to be. How will you measure progress? And lastly, what are your patterns? What's likely to trigger motivation for you? And what's likely to trigger demotivation for you? And what could you put in place right now before that happens to ensure that you stay motivated to take proactive action? Hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please love it, please like it, share it with your friends, because the way that I do business is that by you paying it forward and sharing it with other people, it helps me to grow my business. So thank you very much. Have a fantastic Monday and a happy new year if I don't see you till next Monday. Speak to you soon. Bye.